We are continuing to talk about the past tense. If you remember, we had regular verbs, we had irregular verbs. We know how to ask questions in the past. So let's look at reading today about lifelogging, which is like a diary. I'm going to read the article. We're going to look for those past simple verbs, and then we're going to just practice those past simple verbs. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So we are here. So if I have a sentence, I wrote in my diary. So wrote in comes from the verb to write. It's the past, and it's an irregular because it doesn't have the ed. So that's number one. I wrote in my diary. Number two, I took photos and shared them with friends. So took comes from the verb to take. I took photos, okay? I took means like you take something. So maybe you're holding an object and you move it from one place to another. Or we have the expression to take a photo, to take a picture, to take a video. Number three, I wore a fitness tracker and went running. So when you put something on your body, you wear something, like maybe you wear clothing or you wear a hat. So the past of to wear is I wore. I wore a fitness tracker and went running. I made a video with my phone. So made comes from the verb to make. So you made something. Yesterday, I made a cake. I made something. I made a poster. I made something. I posted on a comment on social media. So this is regular because we have the ed ending. And to post, we know we post a comment, we post a photo, we post a video. Okay, so we have, do you write a diary? So we know now it's not very common maybe to write a diary. It was very common maybe 10, 20 years ago and more, older than that. Everyone would have a little diary and they would write their thoughts or what happened in their day. But it's not very common now. So let's read an article which will tell us about that. So it's called, you could read with me so we can practice our pronunciation. It's called Lifelogging, a 21st century diary. Okay, so a 21st century diary. Remember, diary is like a book where we write what happened in our day, we write our feelings, we write anything that we want. It's just a book that you can write or draw. You can draw and write things in there. Okay, let's practice reading together. So there's an introduction here. In the 17th century, Samuel Pepys wrote the most famous diary in the English language. He began the diary in 1660 and finished it in 1669. Pepys wrote about important events in the history of England and about the lives of famous people. His diary also described the everyday lives of the people in London and his family. So this diary is very useful for historians in the 21st century. Today, some people still write diaries. In a recent survey of 500 people, 23% said they wrote their diary regularly. 1 in 5 men and 1 in 4 women. This included over 35% of people aged between 18 and 34. People aged between 35 and 64 don't often have a diary, probably because they are busy with careers and family life. But 35% of people over 65 also write a diary. In the 21st century, a lot of people want to share their lives and they record the things they do with digital technology. This is called lifelogging. Gordon Bell became famous as the first lifelogger in 2000. He wore a camera around his neck, and the camera automatically took a picture every 30 seconds. In this way, Bell made a digital diary of his life. Nowadays, everyone is a lifelogger. We take photos of what we had for breakfast, post comments on social media about the news, and make videos of events in our lives. We wear fitness trackers so we know how much exercise we did and where we went. So, just as today, historians read the diary of Samuel Pepys and learn about life 300 years ago. Maybe historians in the future will look at our photos, videos, and comments and learn about our lives in the 21st century. So we have some of these verbs that we could use with a preposition, or some verbs. Remember, verbs are like action words that we could use with an article, like a, and the, before the noun. So some verbs that we have, for example, to give up. Can you see how the main verb is give, but then it has a preposition up? Or to walk by. Okay, so it's just a verb with 2 words in it. Or to write to, or to write about. So in number 5, let's look at these expressions with the verb write. So you could say, I wrote about my life experiences. Because you remember, wrote is the past tense, it's an irregular of the verb write. So I wrote about my life experiences. I wrote to my grandparents. So it means a letter, or it doesn't matter. Maybe you wrote an email. You don't have to say an email, a letter. I wrote down a word so that I can remember it. Okay, so we've got wrote about, wrote to. So remember, to means to someone. I wrote to my parents, to my grandparents, to my children. And I wrote down, it means because you write something, you don't want to forget it. So I wrote down a list of my ingredients to the market so that I don't forget anything. Okay, so just keep in mind that we have some verbs that have a preposition that comes with it. So you must include the whole verb and preposition. So subject and then verb, preposition, whatever. So I wrote about, I wrote to, and I wrote down. They all mean a different thing. So we also have verb with an article. So we could say, for example, to see the snow, to play an instrument. So you could see you've got the verb to play, to see, and then you got an article and the noun. So for example, I wrote an email to my boss. I wrote a diary when I was young, or I wrote a letter when I was young. So also know that that's how we use the verb with an article. So what things do you write every day? So maybe you comment on YouTube, yeah, or Twitter, which actually is not called Twitter anymore. It's called X. Or you comment on Facebook. Okay, you comment on Instagram. So we comment a lot on social media. So I'll just put here social media. And like I said, it could be so many platforms. Maybe we write down a list of ingredients. That's something that maybe you do every day. Before you go to the shops, you have to write down what you need, or maybe you write down what you need to do for the day. Maybe you write, so number 6, 2, what do you write about? Food, places. Maybe you write about sports, nature, your family, your faith, or anything. Who do you often write to? So maybe you write to your family, especially if they're not in the country. You write to your family, to your friends. And how do you write to these people? So how? So maybe you use social media messaging, text messaging, such as SMS from your phone. Which new words did you write down in your English class today? So I hope that when we read together that you learnt some new words. So number 7 asks us if for or against. So when we are for something, that means that we agree. When we are against something, that means that we don't agree with it. So if you have a look at these sentences, you can share photos with family and friends. Do you agree with that? Yeah, because we can do that. It's something that we can do. We can share. If you don't agree with it, you're against it, you don't like it, then you can put against. But I'm for it. I think it's good to always share a part of your life. People spend all their free time looking at their phone. Yeah, I don't like that idea. I'm against it. I think people should get out, get some fresh air. They should play a sport, speak, go out. So fitness trackers make people do more exercise. Maybe I'm for it. I mean, maybe some people, they need it. If they wear it, then they'll feel that they need to exercise more. It's interesting and fun to look at your past. If you had a good past, I would think 4. Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes people write bad things about others. I don't agree. I don't think that's good. Against. And historians can learn about people from their photos and videos. Yeah, that's really good to be able to look for. Okay, so then we had to prepare a survey. We'll do it together. So a survey means like you want to get some information from people. So usually you ask them a question. So we can ask people questions in a survey, which another word for a survey is questionnaire. Which social media platform is your favorite? Okay, so which social media platform is your favorite? Maybe we can ask people, what are your photos mostly of? That means, what do you take pictures most of? Is it places? Is it flower? Is it photos of family? You know, maybe you take pictures maybe of your family, maybe your pet. A lot of people love to take a lot of pictures of their pet. So that's a good question. What are your photos mostly of? How much time do you spend on social media every day? That's a good question if we want to find out how much time. So maybe people will say around about 4 hours. So these are good words, around or about. So if it's not, because we can't say exactly how much time, so we use this word around or about. So you can say about 4 hours, about 2 hours a day. You can say, you know, a day, per day. So how much time? About 2 hours a day. We can ask people, who do you mostly send messages to? To my boyfriend, to my husband, to my wife, maybe to your kids or friends, or you could just say to your family. Okay, could be any answer. Who? So who is asking a question about a person? Who do you mostly send messages to? We can also, you know, to find out more about people's lives with, you know, life logging, which we know what life logging means. It's when we're using technology to write about our lives. When do you use social media the most? So when? When is a good question. So maybe before class, before bed, in the evening, at night, maybe at work. We hope not. Or at, you know, before dinner or in my free time. Where do you post your photos? So we need to know a location. You can say on Instagram, maybe, you know, WhatsApp group chats or some group chats that you have somewhere with your friends or family. When did you last post a comment? I think everyone will say very recently, you know, a couple of minutes ago, an hour ago, yesterday. Okay, so these are very good questions to find out now about people's lives with social media, with how do we share photos? How do we share what happened in our day? Okay, so that's what we did. So it was a lesson on life logging. We looked at some irregular past verbs and a regular verb in the past. We read an article together, so practicing our English. And we talked about if we're for something or if we are against something. So that means if we agree with something or we don't agree. If we're for something, it means we agree. Okay, so I'm for, you know, teaching people. I think that's good. I agree with that. I'm against people being bad people. You know, I don't agree. I don't think it's good. And, you know, if we wanted to imagine that we were creating questions for people to find out Where do they post? What do they post of? Who do they send messages to? These are some great questions that we can ask them. So it's interesting today. Like I said, we don't use diaries. It's not very common to write a diary, but we use other ways. You know, we use technology, but in the same way of a diary, to share about what happened in our life. Yes, 1 minute. I'm coming. So information about our lives. That's how we share it. And, you know, we need to know how often, what do we take pictures of? So now we know how to talk about, you know, what we share. What do we write about mostly? How much time do we spend, you know, commenting, sharing, posting? Okay, so we know a lot of things about that. We can talk a lot about our lives, and we can look back at the history of how did people share their lives and what happened in their lives.